Okay, so we're doing a bit of prep, getting ready for the paint. Where I find something significant, I do a little bit with the Gorilla Glue and tape it up again. But basically what I'm doing is just getting the shiny edge off of this. I'm just looking where it reflects against the light and where it's shiny. I just want to dull it up a bit. Now if you sand too much with sandpaper on the foam, it will get all ruffled like what that is right there. With that, when I spray it with the primer, that'll harden that up and I'll be able to sand it lightly and get that off, I believe. But in general, don't over sand. You just want to sand just enough to get the shiny bit off of it. And that little bit of dullness should indicate it's got enough grip in there to grab the paint. Now, with a plane that's been damaged like this, there's places where branches have gone by it and just, created a little bit of a valley. I'll sand down in those, and for the more severe ones, I will put some lightweight filler into there. Having gotten it all nice and dull, now I give it a wipe down with a microfiber cloth. And what we're going to do next is to put some filler in there, the lightweight filler. So I just want to make sure that wherever I'm putting the filler, it's not full of dust and whatnot. And of course, after we sand the filler, we'll need to do this again to make sure we don't have dust and junk in the paint. Okay, so in areas where I've done some major work, this sands a whole lot better than what the Gorilla Glue does. And oftentimes where it's been hit, it's indented a little bit anyway. Plus the Gorilla Glue will have little tiny holes in it that need to get filled. After having dulled up the finish a bit with the sandpaper, I sprayed it with this 3-in-1 prep. And I was talking to one of the fellows at the club, and he was saying that he reckons it's more likely the issue of it not being clean enough. So I thought, well, I better test it just to see whether my paint is going to stick or not. And so I did my typical thing with the tape, and I pull it off, and yeah, Houston, we got a problem. It's still not sticking on the way I want, so I think I'm going to pull it all off again. Might as well do that before I get more paint on it. And I will wipe it down lightly. My friend at the club suggested alcohol, putting alcohol lightly on a rag, and then using that to clean the surface with. So I will try that to see if that makes any difference. And you can benefit from my experimenting here as to what really works and what doesn't work. You can see it is sticking on in places, but like that's probably where it's been repaired with the Gorilla Glue. And my masking tape supplier will be loving me for all the masking tape that I'll be buying as a result of using this technique. I suppose I ought to test it on this one before I strip the paint off of absolutely everything and see if I can make any difference at all. Well, before I do my spray of the fuselage and the thing here, along with the one that we removed the paint off of, I want to get the control horn set up for this. I've lost the plastic control horn that went in there. Because my control horn is going to sit on top of this, I've filled in the little indentation that was there. I'd actually had carved it out, hoping to put something exactly like the other one in there, but couldn't readily acquire them. And so what I did is I just smeared the Gorilla Glue in that area, put tape over top of it, then put a thin piece of plywood on top of it with a corresponding piece on the other side to keep from damaging the surface, and put a clamp, a spring type clamp over that. So that has gotten that like perfect. I mean, I'm just amazed at that. And I had just the right amount of Gorilla Glue in there so that it was able to just make the little air bubbles super tiny, which is going to be super strong, and fill in the whole thing without anything extra going anywhere. So that's going to be great for putting on our control horn. One other thing that I noticed with regard to this, you know, is putting this packer next to it. And this is a square angle here. And look at that. You know, generally you put control horns on perpendicular to the, you know, hinge line. And this thing is way off. So I'm not quite sure why they did that. But anyway, we will have ours nice and perpendicular. Okay, I was planning on using this little guy here to be the control horn on this other aileron that needs it. And so anyway, we sort of rigged up, you know, what it had to be. But then I look at that thing and thought, boy, that's really lightweight, flimsy, you know, not really happy with that. So I dug out this piece of extrusion, aluminum, and it's a little tiny, about maybe a millimeter shorter, and I hadn't picked it before because, you know, the hole needs to be right on the top surface. But if I put a bit of a packer under it, you know, I can get it up there. It needs to be a little bit thicker packer than the other one. But I can use balsa for the packer. That's not going to weigh anything. And it'll give me a much stronger control horn. So I've used the this one here as a guide as to where everything needs to be. And we will cut it out, and then we'll double check that with the this one here and see how we go. We've got a neat little control horn made here. I've got a little bit of ply there. I'm lining up this edge on the edge of the aileron, setting down to what I think is pretty straight, holding that down, and then taking a 05 pencil, being careful to keep it straight that way, marking a hole. Okay. So now we've got our hole marked pretty close to where we put the crosshatch, and certainly in the middle of the area that we're after. So now we'll work out what size that hole is and drill a hole in here. We already got a couple holes in the bottom. We'll make another piece to match that for the other side, and we're all set. In drilling our holes, I got our little back piece on there. Got it lined up on one end, drilled the hole through, poked the little bolt into the hole to hold it there, and then very carefully lined up the other end, drilled a hole for that one, and did the same thing for our backing plate. So we got into our spray booth again, and I got the blue painted, U.S. Navy Blue Angels blue, and it looks pretty good. Because tape tends to pull a paint off of this plane, I thought what I'd do is just mask it using paper. So I stuck the paper on to just be held in place. And it basically worked, except for the fact that I allowed the paint to dry with the paper on there, and then it tended to pull the paint off anyway when I removed the paper. So if you do it this way, remove the paper before the paint dries, which means basically you'll need to spray one side at a time, remove the paper, let it dry, then you can do the other side. Or perhaps a better alternative is, instead of trying to do any masking at all, just paint your contrasting colors on the control surfaces before they're attached to the plane. And then they can be all one color and you don't have to worry about masking. I'm preparing to glue the windscreen back onto the cockpit. And a friend of mine bought one of these recently, and his windscreen fell off before he even had a chance to fly it. So I'm thinking that what I'm going to do is I've got a barbecue skewer here, and I'm just poking little holes into it all around, just to give that glue something to adhere to. This of course came off in the crash, but I noted that all of the glue was stuck to the plexiglass bit, and none of it stuck to the foam, which given what we've been experiencing with this foam with paint is not at all surprising. So there's nothing like having some little indentations in it to give that glue something to grab a hold of. So we'll give that a try and see how well that works. I also noted that where I don't have the paint all the way up to the edge of that, it's showing a little bit of white through, so I'm going to do a little bit of touch-up painting there as well. We will use a clear Gorilla Glue for this. I'm thinking about putting a dot on each one of those holes. Me sitting there pretty nicely. Well, it's now time to start getting her all back together again. So yeah, let's remove some of the masking. Paint is nice and rubbery, but it sure doesn't like to stick to that foam. No question about that. Okay. Okay. Got our nylon bolt. And I'll verify that they came through. Yep, they're both in the nuts. So that's good. Tail needs to get glued in. We're removing the paint from where the tail is going to get glued. Poke a few holes in there. Okay. Oh, gotta be careful with this paint. You know, all that was this paper next to there that had the paint stuck to it, and I pulled it this way, and it pulled off that paint. Even when I pull it that way, it wants to pull off the paint. So we're gonna have a bit of touch-up work to do. Let me just score it very lightly. And see what that enables us to do. Yeah. Okay, so scored both the yellow and the blue and got a halfway decent thing. And it's got a little bit of the foam exposed. And we'll just touch those up with a brush. Terrible down here, but at least this is the underside. Okay, so where I had the glue on it, it's sticking pretty good. Doing our best to try to remove the blue paint in such a way that doesn't come off in the areas that are exposed. Okay, trial fit. it's adequate to sight down the ridges there as far as the tail being straight. Give it a spray. And the glue. $835. 35. 835. That looks good. She's all done. Yep. Got all the control surfaces in place, and paint job has come out reasonable. It was a real pain trying to do any sort of masking on it because it likes to pull the paint off anytime you put tape on it. And that includes the new paint with primer and everything else that I did. But nonetheless, I'm pleased with it. Of course, as you think about it the way it was before, yeah, getting lots more pizzazz. And yeah, pretty cool. But pretty hard to replicate all of that. I do have the stickers and I could glue them on, but I'm figuring what I've done with that is just fine. So I'm pleased with the overall outcome. Well, thank you for watching another one of our videos. Great to have a plane repaired and ready to fly again, and we'll look forward to that remaden very soon. In the meantime, you certainly want to be subscribing because there's some exciting things that are going to be happening over the next, it'll be many months worth. I've managed to acquire some new little projects. So what do you do with a C-47, DC-3, whatever, that was partially built a long time ago and has lots of little things to fix and to finish off. Yeah, I got to build some engine nacelles and various things, but boy, that's going to be exciting. And wow, F-86 Sabre that's going to get built. And let's see, what else we got here? We got what is this, an F4 that we've acquired, and an old beat-up P-51. So we've got lots of things, and it's going to be interesting because so far I don't have any instructions for these things. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe, and then of course also have a look at some of the other videos on our site. I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day and enjoy your flying.